So most of these NFL wildcard games were not close, but there were still some pretty epic moments, from a rookie quarterback winning a road playoff game for the first time in over a decade to a veteran QB potentially losing out on tens of millions of dollars this offseason based on his poor performance. There's a lot to get into, so I've got to take a look at every single wildcard playoff game, the Patriots landing a new coach, and much more right after. First up, before I get to the craziness that was the wildcard round, before the first wildcard game even happened on Saturday, it was announced that the New England Patriots made a decision on their head coach, opting to hire former Titans head coach and longtime former Patriots linebacker Mike Vrabel. I feel like this was ultimately the direction the Patriots were going to go, so I wasn't extremely surprised when this got announced. Vrabel is a hell of a football coach and obviously comes with a ton of experience. Meanwhile, Jerod Mayo had basically no experience as a head coach. I don't really feel like it was fair to move on from Mayo after just 1 year. Didn't really set him up for success or give him time, but it seemed pretty clear that they wanted Vrabel to join the ranks, basically no matter what it took. And, I mean, it makes sense. The guy won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots and also got the Titans to the playoffs 4 of his 6 years as their head coach with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. No huge disrespect to him. He wasn't elite. He was top 15-ish, I would say, but Vrabel was able to make the most of that, and now he has Drake May to kind of shape, develop, and we'll see what happens in that chapter with Vrabel at the helm. All in all, this was a great hire for New England, in my opinion. So, while one notable coach is now in, another is officially out, with that being former Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. Cowboys GM Jerry Jones released a statement on Monday after the mutual parting of ways was announced, saying that it became mutually clear that it would be better for each of us to head in different directions. Well, Tom Pelissero ultimately took things to mean that McCarthy and Jones couldn't agree on length of McCarthy's contract, his next contract, and so they decided to part ways. But Jordan Schultz actually said they didn't even reach the stage of getting to a contract negotiation. Either way, this is confusing to me because if you were going to move on from Mike McCarthy regardless, why not do it immediately following the end of the regular season, like basically every other team did who wanted to push reset on their head coaching position? That would give you opportunity to interview others like the highly sought after offensive coordinator from the Lions, for example. Either way, after a 5-season stint with Dallas, a 49-35 record in the regular season, but just 1-4 in the playoffs, that era, the Mike McCarthy era, has officially come to an end, and I'm sure McCarthy will immediately be considered by other teams that are looking for a new head coach at this point in time. That, however, is a conversation for another day because I've got to get into these wild card games. The Texans and Chargers kicked off the weekend on Saturday afternoon in Houston. LA came into this game as 2.5-point favorites despite being on the road, and I think most people expected them, including me, I expected them to win this game. They were coming off of 3 straight wins, averaging 36 points per game in that span, while the Texans, yes, did get a win over the Titans in Week 18, but had previously gotten destroyed by the Ravens and handled by the Chiefs in the 2 prior. And in that Chiefs game, by the way, Tank Dell was lost for the season due to a pretty severe knee injury. Anyway, they started off slow in this one, the Texans fumbling on their first drive, which allowed the Chargers to hit their second field goal and go up 6-0. CJ Stroud almost threw a pick on their next possession too, but luckily the defender dropped it. It wasn't until late in the second quarter that they finally got things going. Stroud connected with Nico Collins here in the red zone, and they never looked back, proceeding to outscore the Chargers 22-6 in the second half as they pounded the rock with Joe Mixon and made enough plays on defense to blow out the Chargers 32-12. Got to give credit to Houston's offense for coming to life after a slow start against one of the best defenses in the league. CJ Stroud finished with over 280 yards in that touchdown to Nico Collins, and Collins had himself a day with 7 catches for 122 yards in that score. Those 122 yards, by the way, set a new Texans record for most receiving yards in a playoff game. Joe Mixon also eclipsed 100 yards, and he hit pay dirt late in the fourth quarter on this 4th-and-1 play in the red zone. The tipping point in this game to me, though, was Justin Herbert throwing a pick 6 that turned a 6-13 game into a 6-20 game. Herbert really struggled in this one, and that was probably the story of the day for LA. He threw not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions, including that pick 6 late in the third quarter that was way over the head of Ladd McConkey. He was clearly off in this one, completing less than half of his passes. Houston's defense, meanwhile, showed up, pressuring him on 19 of 36 dropbacks and taking Herbert down 4 times, which appeared to have him pretty rattled. That's probably an understatement. The guy threw 4 picks in this game alone after throwing just 3 over the course of the entire regular season. I will say this interception right here was very Kadarius Toney-esque, right in the midst of his intended target. So not all was on Herbert, but still, 4 interceptions in one game, that is not going to help you get the W, even if you have Jim Harbaugh as your head coach. One of the only bright spots for the offense was the rookie, Ladd McConkey, who hauled in 9 passes for 197 yards in this 86-yard touchdown on a 3rd and 26, in which he went up and got it, stiff-armed the defender, and raced in for the score. His 197 yards, by the way, are now the most in a playoff game by a rookie, breaking Puka Nakua's record from last year. So obviously, while it sucks to get bounced in the first round, it helps knowing they should have their go-to receiver for years to come. And with the win, the Texans advanced to the divisional round, where they head to KC to take on the Chiefs for the second time in 4 weeks. We'll take a look at the entire updated playoff bracket towards the end of this video, but for now, let's get to the second Saturday game between the 3-seed Baltimore Ravens and the 6-seed Pittsburgh Steelers. This got out of hand quickly, with the Ravens taking a 21-0 lead into halftime and hanging on to win 28-14. You could tell by the opening drive, Baltimore was not playing games. Derrick Henry took the direct snap, faked it to Lamar, and stiff-armed Mika Fitzpatrick into the astral realm. A few plays later, Lamar hit Rashad Bateman in the back of the end zone, and the dominance did not stop, especially on the ground. Baltimore ran the ball 5-0, 50, yes, 50, crazy. I can't believe it. I'm talking like this because that is an absurd number of runs times in this game. Lamar scrambled 15 times alone. That was his most of the season since week 1, when he ran 16 times trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The MVP of this game, though, was Derrick Henry. This is why they went out and signed him last offseason, for games like this, a playoff game against your bitter rival who has a top 10 defense. Well, no problem at all for King Henry, who finished the game with 186 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. That was the second most rushing yards he's ever had in a playoff game, and check this out. His highest rushing playoff game was exactly to the date 5 years since this current playoff game against the Steelers, and it was ironically against the Ravens when he played for the Tennessee Titans. As for the Steelers, they were playing from behind the entire time, so they pretty quickly abandoned the run game, which is not the ideal recipe for success for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson started cooking in the second half and did lead 2 touchdown drives on their first 2 possessions, but they were shut out after that, and the Ravens grinded them down to get the win and advance to the divisional round. They'll be playing the Buffalo Bills, who got the win over Denver on Sunday. That matchup between the Ravens and Bills, by the way, could be one of the highlights of the entire postseason, though of course we will have to see how the rest of these games play out before knowing that for sure. Now, you could feel Bills fans getting a little nervous after the Broncos scored on the opening drive. Bo Nix threw a beauty of a deep ball, 40-plus yards to his former college teammate Troy Franklin, and the Broncos took a early and very quick 7-0 lead. I even thought to myself, wow, if Bo Nix and the offense is going to play like that, then they have a real shot to win this game. Well, that thought didn't last very long, because the Bills proceeded to score 31 unanswered points as they obliterated the Broncos 31-7. Josh Allen was dang near perfect, completing 20 of 26 passes for 272 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then he had quite the day on the ground as well, rushing for nearly 50 yards. Allen's best play of the game probably was this one here in the third quarter on 4th and 1. The lunatic threw it all the way into the end zone, but before that happened, he bought some time with his legs, couldn't find anybody open. Then when pressure was bearing down on him, he uncorked a dart to running back Ty Johnson in the back of the end zone, who somehow, I guess, got his knee and butt down before his feet touched out of bounds. They reviewed it and confirmed it and all that. It looked like his foot might have touched, but with the refs fully on the side of Josh Allen, they were even apologizing to him on the sideline. It didn't really matter, and once they established a big lead, they leaned on their run game, with James Cook leading the team in attempts and yards, while Josh Allen ran 8 times, as I said earlier, for near 50 yards, and Ty Johnson also carried it 9 times. Their run game allowed them to keep their defense off the field and is the reason why they more than doubled Denver's time of possession. Hats off to the Bills' defense too, because outside of that opening drive, nothing looked easy for the rookie quarterback. He had 63 yards alone on the initial drive, yet had just 81 the rest of the game to finish with 144. They were averaging over 4.5 yards per carry, but it's hard to stick with the run when you're down by so much. It was pretty evident that the better team won this game. I mean, it wasn't really even close, if I'm going to be honest, but this will definitely be some valuable experience for Bo Nix, and ultimately Broncos fans should be pretty happy about their season. Despite having nearly $90 million in dead money due to the awful Russell Wilson contract debacle. They made it to the playoffs for the first time since Peyton Manning retired, and Bo Nix appears to be the guy Sean Payton was hoping he would be and should only get better from here in theory. It was always going to be a very tough ask for a rookie to go into Buffalo and beat Josh Allen in his playoff debut. And as I said earlier, the Bills will now host the Ravens in the divisional round, which I cannot wait for. The Ravens smoked them like a Cuban cigar 35-10 in Baltimore back in week 4, but that was a very long time ago. The teams have morphed and adapted since then, and being in Buffalo this time around should help the Bills and should be a banger of a game. Next up, the Eagles took care of the Packers 22-10 thanks to another elite showing from their defense. Things didn't start well for Green Bay when on the opening kickoff, Keyshawn Nixon got rocked and he fumbled the football with Philly somehow recovering. They of course turned that into a touchdown with Jalen Hurts finding a wide open Jahan Dotson for his first receiving touchdown as an Eagle. Jordan Love came into the game with a little bit of an elbow injury, and I'm not sure if that affected him or not, but he did not play well. He threw 3 picks, with 2 of them coming in the first half, as the Packers offense was completely shut out in the first 2 quarters. Their only touchdown of the game came on a goal line carry from Josh Jacobs, who got the ball down to the 1 on the play prior with this angry, epic 32-yard run. Outside of that, there wasn't much to cheer for from the Packers offense. In fact, it was quite the opposite, because on top of the struggles and turnovers, they lost several key starters to injury throughout the game. They had just lost Christian Watson to a torn ACL last week, and this week, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, and multiple defenders all left the game due to injury. So even if they somehow managed to beat the Eagles, I think they would have been toast in the divisional round because of all those injuries. The Eagles, though, didn't light the world on fire offensively. They did enough to get the W, but they didn't really need to go off on offense. Saquon Barkley had a solid outing, finishing with 119 yards on 25 carries. Jalen Hurts only had 13 completions, turning them into 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert each had 4 catches, which led the team, but everyone else was very quiet, including A.J. Brown, who had just 1 catch for 10 yards. And with his team up and him not being involved on offense, he took the opportunity to catch up on a little reading while on the bench. Apparently, he was reading a book called Inner Excellence, which has since become the best-selling book on Amazon after the camera caught A.J. Brown reading it. But a little something to note here with the Eagles winning this game. This is the 5th year of having a 7th seed in each conference, and over the last 5 years, the 7th seed has only won 1 time, and just 2 of the 10 games have been decided by 1 score. That's obviously not great, not competitive football, and not that exciting, but don't expect anything to change because the league is making a piss ton of money off of having 2 extra playoff games, and we all know we're going to continue watching anyway. And after 4 straight non-one-score games, we finally got ourselves a good one on Sunday night between the Bucs and Commanders. It was tied at 10 apiece at halftime, with Washington scoring a touchdown on a 17-play drive that took 9 minutes off the clock. Sheesh. The Bucs then were able to score a touchdown of their own before the half, as Mike Evans hauled in an impressive 1-yard throw by Baker Mayfield. Things got a little wild in the 4th quarter, though. Tampa was up 17-13, but Washington had the ball on the goal line looking to take the lead. Tampa's D held strong for 4 straight plays, though, and forced a turnover on downs. So the Bucs actually had a chance to go and extend their lead, and I thought this might actually be over. However, this handoff or fake handoff to Jalen McMillan on an end around was botched, and the Commanders recovered the fumble deep in Buccaneer territory. Well, this time they did get into the end zone on 4th and 2. Went for it again, those lunatics, with Jayden Daniels floating this ball to Scary Terry to take a 3-point lead with a little under 10 minutes to go. Tampa worked their way down to Washington's 12-yard line, but Bucky Irving got blown up on 3rd and inches, and they were forced to kick the field goal, which actually tied it at 20 apiece. Jayden Daniels then was incredibly clutch on this final drive, converting a 3rd and 6 with this strike to De'Ami Brown that picked up 21 yards. Austin Eckler took this short pass for an 18-yard gain. Then on 3rd and 1, Jayden Daniels took off on a designed QB run, breaking a tackle and getting to the edge to pick up the 1st down. This was a crucial 3rd and 1 because this allowed them to run the clock all the way down and bring out kicker Zane Gonzalez for a 37-yard attempt. In an absolutely insane fashion, his kick drifted right and doinked off the upright, but went in to give the Commanders the walk-off win, 23-20. Shout out to Scary Terry and De'Ami Brown. Both had 89 yards, which was pretty impressive. And speaking of impressive, this was an incredible game that ended in an incredible way, as the Commanders won their first playoff game since the 2005 season, which was coincidentally also against the Buccaneers. Jayden Daniels was poised throughout this entire game, and believe it or not, he became the first rookie quarterback to win a playoff game for the Commanders in the Super Bowl era. He's also the first rookie starting quarterback to win a road playoff game since 2012. Daniels finished the night 24 of 35 for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns. Plus, he picked up some crucial first downs with his legs, also leading the team in rushing yards. I do feel bad for Baker Mayfield, though, who had an incredible season and is probably crushed with how that game ended. They had every chance to win, but that fumble and then not being able to pick up the first on 3rd and short, resulting in them kicking a field goal, are what ultimately cost them this game. Baker only threw the ball 18 times. That is a real stat and very surprising to me, but he did get nearly 200 yards and a pair of touchdowns on those 15 completions. Mike Evans led the team in receiving yards and got the better of Marshawn Lattimore in their highly anticipated matchup and finished the night with 7 grabs for 92 yards and a touchdown. But Lattimore and the rest of his Commanders team get the last laugh as the Bucs are heading home, and the Commanders are headed to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Commanders, by the way, were the only road team to win a game after all the home teams prior got the W. And finally, our last game of the wildcard round took place last night between the Rams and the Vikings. The game was moved to the Cardinal Stadium in Glendale, Arizona because of the wildfires in LA, but it seemed like there was a great atmosphere in there throughout the game. They said on the broadcast that there was a little more Vikings fans than Rams fans. I mean, I think they said 51%, but how the heck do you know that? Anyway, the lack of a true home field advantage for the Rams did not stop them from coming out and dominating. They started out with the ball and went down the field right away, with tight end Tyler Higbee making an unreal grab here over the linebacker. Stafford then found a wide-open Kyren Williams in the end zone to give them the lead. This game got out of hand very quickly here, let's be honest, and it really broke loose on this play in the second quarter. Minnesota was down 10-3 and looking to tie the game, but Akello Witherspoon came in on the cornerback blitz, knocking the ball loose with Jared Verse scooping it up and taking it 57 yards to the crib to give LA a 14-point lead. Not gonna lie, I think Kevin O'Connell got a little desperate on this next possession because he opted to go for it on 4th and 2 at the 50, and Sam Darnold was sacked, so they turned the ball over on downs. That sack, by the way, was the 6th of the first half. Yes, this man took 6 first half sacks, and by the time it was all said and done, he got put on his buttocks 9 times last night, which tied an NFL playoff record. Just awful. The Rams made them pay for that failed 4th down attempt too, as Stafford hit his tight end Davis Allen to put LA up 24-3 in the first half. This game was pretty much over at halftime, but the Vikings did manage to score a touchdown in the second half. TJ Hawkinson actually made a really nice grab here, thrown behind him, spun around, kept going, raced into the end zone, touchdown Vikings, but they failed the 2-point conversion, so it was still a 3-possession game after LA hit another field goal. And that's where the score ended. 27-9 as the Rams slaughtered the Vikings, the literal opposite of Norwegians' altar sacrifices throughout history. LA will now head to Philly to take on the Eagles in the divisional round, and I'm pretty happy for Stafford and company. They didn't put up insane numbers on offense, mostly because their defense was taking care of business, but I thought Stafford managed the game pretty well. He was 19 of 27 for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. But check out his numbers against the blitz. He was pressured on 20 of his 29 dropbacks, and on those 20 plays, he was 14 of 18 for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is exactly why Matt Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and why the Rams are a dangerous team in these playoffs with the savvy veteran quarterback and head coach Sean McVay. However, the Rams did suffer some tough injuries in this one, with these player statuses currently, at the time of this recording, being up in the air for the matchup against the Eagles. Tight end Tyler Higbee was going off, catching 5 passes for 58 yards, which actually led the entire room by the end of this game. What's crazy about that stat line is the last pass he caught was with roughly 5 minutes still to go in the first quarter. He left shortly after that with a chest injury that ended with him going to the hospital for evaluation. He's in stable condition, but his status is up in the air for next week, and he was clearly going off in this game. On top of that, cornerback Akello Witherspoon left the game in the second half with a thigh injury, doubtful to return. So keep eyes on those two players this week because that is a starting corner and then you're starting tight end, a key weapon potentially lost on both sides of the ball. As for Minnesota, the fairy tale 14-win season behind Sam Darnold has come to a screeching halt. Just 2 weeks ago, they were hoisting him up in the locker room after beating the Packers, and now Vikings fans want his teammates to hoist him up once again like that photo and throw him out of the building. It really is one of the most epic offensive collapses we've seen in quite some time. Before Week 18, this Vikings team had won 9 games straight and were averaging over 26 points per game over that span. Then in Week 18 against Detroit, a massive game to decide the number 1 seed in the NFC, Sam Darnold choked and they lost 31-9. Then this week, again, just 9 points of offense and they lose 27-9. And what's kind of wild about this is that the Vikings only lost to 2 teams all season long, the Lions and the Rams. Detroit beat them twice in the regular season. Then the Rams beat them back in Week 8, and then again last night. And I know the sacks aren't all on Darnold, but at least half of them came as a result of him holding onto the ball for way too long, which is 100% on him. It was a meltdown of epic proportions, and sadly, I think he's cost himself quite a bit of money these last 2 games. Some were speculating he was playing so well that he could earn around $40 to $50 million per year this offseason, but I don't know how any team could feel good about giving a guy that kind of money when he just choked like that in back-to-back games, big games. He has had a pretty nice season-long body of work, to be clear, so he'll get paid by somebody that's going to need a quarterback. Maybe they don't feel like they could get somebody in the draft. It's not the greatest quarterback class. But when you shit the bed when the lights shine the brightest at the end of the season, his value definitely went down. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting thing to see how it all plays out and if a team throws a big contract at him or not. If a team does, I just don't think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And with that Rams win, wildcard weekend is officially in the books with the divisional round playoff bracket looking as follows. In the AFC, the 1-seed Chiefs will be hosting the 4-seed Texans. Then the number 2 seed Bills will be hosting the 3-seed Ravens. That one should be the game of the weekend, bar none. Then for the NFC, the 1-seed Lions will be hosting the 6-seed Commanders, while the 2-seed Eagles will host the 4-seed Rams. The Chiefs and Texans will play on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Central. Then the Lions and Commanders will be after that. Meanwhile, Philly and LA kick off at 2 p.m. Central on Sunday. Then the Bills and Ravens play at 5:30. So you guys got to let me know in the comments down below which game from wildcard weekend surprised you the most. I mean, a lot of them were boring blowouts, let's be honest here. But then let me know which games you're looking forward to the most this upcoming weekend. I'll be doing a preview video on the divisional round, every single game later this week. Pretty in-depth, but for now, that's all I got. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.